Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me is James Fox. How are you, James?
I'm good, man. What's going on?
Oh, Zach Collins is back in Chicago, so we can all celebrate.
Something like that. Yes.
Something like that.
Yeah, I
Jerry
know we
loves to have a Zach Collins.
we were gonna touch on like last night's, at some point, but now we actually have like a Bulls one too on a Future Sox podcast. So yeah, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah, just
We can
touching
do it.
on it really quick,
We can do whatever we
because it
want.
just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're adults. We can do what we want. We can eat ice cream for dinner. We can talk about Zach LaVine getting traded to the Sacramento Kings, be reunited with DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah. I mean, in a city full of like horrible rebuilding teams, it's something that like the Bulls need to do that and they just haven't, and it's not fun, but like it is kind of what it is. So yeah, they're gonna be really bad. I will say this: Arturas Karnisovas, like really bad at this. Chris Getz is not the worst general manager employed by Jerry Reinsdorf. That's a fact, in my opinion, anyways.
I mean, you would have thought maybe right when it started that you would be going out on a limb saying that, but after watching this over the last couple of years, I'd say that's a
Yeah.
pretty fair statement.
Well, I think with the Bulls, there's there's all sorts of like weird restrictions where like the like ownership really values like making the playoffs and that sort of thing, and it's stupid in that league. But so I do think he was hamstrung a little bit, but my God, like it's just you've had the opportunity to do this like 3 straight years now, and you're finally gonna do it, but you're not gonna get like anything in return. So it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, at least not a whole lot. So Vince is asking who the Bulls got back in return. They got Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Herter, and their own 2025 pick from the Spurs,
Yeah,
free and
back
clear.
basically, which they probably would have gotten anyway because the Spurs only got that pick if it was top 10 protected. And the Bulls will surely be in the top 10 now, I would think, because they're going to make a couple more deals. But now they don't have to worry about it. Now they can do whatever they want, and they'll have their own pick. And then last night, I don't know if you were awake. I was not. Like I saw it this morning, and I was like, "This is fake. There's no way this happened." And then, oh my good God, like talk about just like destroying the will of a fan base. Like I would be devastated. Like just like oh my God. Like I'm not a guy that's like I'm gonna quit my team. Like I think that stuff's like kind of nonsense. But like if you traded 25-year-old Luka Doncic like for that, and I was a fan of that team, like I don't know how I would be able to recover.
Yeah, for those of you that do not know, Luka Doncic got traded from the Mavericks to the Lakers. Uh, yes, I was awake. I actually woke my son up, who was sleeping on the couch next to me, because I was like, "What just happened here?" Just like I was, my mind was
How
blown.
long were
I
you how
couldn't
long
believe
were
it.
you focused on like whether or not it was like a real shams or like a hack or something? Like because like I was this morning, right? So I had seen it everywhere, but like going back and looking at it, I'm like, "Oh my God, this is like insanity."
Yeah, so I thought maybe at first that it was a hack job, but then I saw that it was on his Instagram as well. So I was like, well, if it's on both of these sites, it's got to be real, right? And then I saw it pop up from ESPN's from another ESPN guy, and I was like, oh, okay, it's real. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Obviously, there's something going on in Dallas where they hate that guy for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I know he's like lazy and fat and stuff, but he's so awesome. Like and I think you just hope that like a 25-year-old grows up at some point, right? But like holy cow. Like and I forgot that Mark Cuban was like basically divested completely. Like I knew that he sold his shares, but for some reason I thought he was still like involved like in the day-to-day like with the GM and that stuff, but apparently not. Like he sold out, he like left essentially, and he's like not running things anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think this was something that he would ever do because he's huge on like keep superstars. I mean, so all right, well that was 5 minutes on the NBA. So
Yeah. B says that he didn't know that there were that many varietals of mambas. There is a red mamba in the trade.
yeah, because
Um,
Kevin Herter's redhead. Yes.
yeah, I did not. I also was unaware of the different shades of Mambas.
So really quick here, Adrian asked like if there's an MLB comp to this trade. I don't think there is, but I quote tweeted somebody earlier with an NFL version, and this is pretty funny because I got in the car and I went grocery shopping, and there was some like host on like national radio who quoted the tweet that I sent, but he didn't say my name. He's like, "Oh, some guy on Twitter compared it to like Cincinnati Bengals trading Joe Burrow for like Matthew Stafford because they want to go under center more." That's like the equivalent in the NFL. So thanks, radio host, for not mentioning I'm just some guy on Twitter, which is I am, which it's totally fine. But I think I was the originator. So
Yeah, I was gonna say thanks for showing up tonight. I didn't know, in between your draggings on Twitter today,
oh yeah, it
whether
was
you'd make it or not.
a public flogging, like apparently. But even though like yeah, it's fine. Like we should why didn't we go to the Super Bowl and broadcast live
Oh, we should
and
have.
meet people? We just be sitting there, Future Sox podcast on Radio Row.
Why
I
not?
could
I mean,
I
everybody
could
goes to Radio Row, I heard.
yeah, like I could ask, you know, um like people from the Chiefs how Eric Bieniemy will do coaching the Bears running backs. Just we could
Is
come
it?
up with something.
I see. Is this correct? Calvin Johnson is going to be an assistant wide receivers coach.
I don't know. I didn't see that
Y-
yet. That
I
would be great.
saw something on the old X about that. I
Mm.
don't know whether it's true
Well,
or
it
not.
has to be true. It was on X. So,
True. Um, I know that there's something on here that I missed. Um, and of course, now I don't see it. I
what's
don't
up,
know. I
Trey?
thought, how you doing, Trey? Thanks for coming in, guys. We appreciate it. All right, so let's move along to actual White Sox news here. Um,
People in
and
podcast
it's
form can fast forward 8 minutes if they want. Like, yeah,
true. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
put a little time marker
yeah,
in there.
yeah.
Skip to White Sox stuff. And this isn't even real White Sox news. It's fake White Sox news. Robert trade rumors that have been kind of floating around. There's been one floating around with Cincinnati. You want to go ahead and expound upon that?
I will, but like, what do you make of the White Sox? And I'm guessing it's the White Sox because they've always done this, like being totally okay with like sticking the Reds name out there in trade rumors. Like, I wonder if the Reds are one of those teams that just like don't comment. This is like the first thing I thought of because this happened with Cease too. Like all the names leaked, right? Like Cease was like rumored to, or maybe it was also, it might have been Crochet. I think it was Cease, not Crochet. And like Bruce Levine had names. Like he was like, oh yeah, they wanted this guy, and this guy, but it went nowhere. It's like, well, that's weird. So I always think that's like trying to press somebody else. Um, so Jim Bowden came out and said basically that the Phillies were into, and he said that the White Sox want two like top five prospects out of an organization. So, essentially the Reds rumor came out and it was centered around Edwin Arroyo, but they couldn't agree on prospects and they couldn't agree on money going back, which look, man, if the White Sox have to eat money to trade Luis Robert and only get Edwin Arroyo, like I would keep him. Like that's not enough. Like I just and I understand like we've talked about this a lot. Like I think there's a chance that the White Sox are just scared to death of him that he just whatever, right? And this might not be fair, but like isn't going to work hard, it's going to get hurt again, like something like that, and then they're just going to be stuck with nothing. But I would gamble this time, like I would bring him into the season and see what happens because I think you can get more than that.
Yeah, that's pretty much Trey saying the same thing in the comments. I kind of think the same thing is that if you can't get what you're looking for, and I kind of feel like Getz has been pretty good about this since he started being the GM, is when he didn't feel like he was getting at least somebody that he really wanted, he didn't just trade a guy to trade a guy. At least, within somewhat a reason. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. The Arroyo thing, I think that he's got some upside, but it's not enough for me to look at him as a headliner of a trade with the Reds.
No, I mean if that's like one of like three players you get back or something, like fine. I know he was hurt. Like the White Sox sat on the AFL, so I'm sure they think that Arroyo sticks it short and he's like a decent gamble. He's still pretty young, but I mean, that just can't be like you can't eat money and get Edwin Arroyo and be like, yay, like we sold Luis Robert. Like That's crazy. This question from Vince about 2023. So like remember like Chris Getz took over like what Han and Rick and Kenny did the trade deadline and then they were fired like a couple of weeks later and Getz was hired in September, I believe. I just trading him that winter with 4 years of control after like a rock star year, I just think would have been really hard. Like my guess is the expectations were sky high in a deal as they should be, right? Like 4 years of control for a guy that just came off of like a 38 homer season. Chris Getz likely thinks like, hey, we'll bring Robert into the season. We're likely going to be bad, but he'll be good and we'll deal him, right? And then he had the bad season, and now he has 3 years of control, and now you're in the position you're in. So I don't really blame them for not trading him sooner. It's really, really hard to trade guys that are that good with that much control left because you just like the cost is just totally prohibitive.
Yeah, the amount of value that you're going to get back is generally not going to, at least with the production that he had in 2023, the return you're going to get is not going to offset that unless every single one of the guys that you trade for hits. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, because it's definitely a sell low or like a sell okay situation. Like nobody would have been happy with that. Like if Chris Getz trades Luis Robert at the 2023 winter meetings, like after like 2 months after taking over, like he would have been murdered. Like maybe literally. Like yeah,
I mean, I mean, 2 months until the season happens, and then he plays the first, 10 games, and then he's done for 2 months, and then
yeah.
comes back and is underwhelming. That's the only thing I can look at and say, well, yeah, he might get killed right off the bat, but then after that,
Hmm.
if he had the 2024 season and you sold high on him and got a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, I will say this, and like I'm pretty convinced now though that they if it's up to them, I think they would trade him before the season starts. They're not going to make a bad deal that or something that they think doesn't make sense, but I think they would prefer to trade him because I don't think they trust him. Like I'm sure they have he might go into spring trade. Could be a cease deal where he goes into spring training and he looks really good and outfielder gets hurt or something. And once a team sees that he's healthy, I will not be surprised if he's traded in March and he never even suits up. But you know, it doesn't mean they have to rush and do it right now.
yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either, just judging by how things generally tend to go. But, you know, we'll see here. I think it's kind of one of those things where who really knows at this point.
Yeah. Vince, because
Um,
I don't think so. Vince asked, like, why would he have been murdered? Or because I don't think they would have gotten enough if they made the trade at that time. Like, yes, they would have gotten a lot more than we think they're going to get right now, obviously. But at the time, I think we all would have been underwhelmed if he actually made a deal.
I mean, depending on who they got in return, but yeah, I have to agree that if you traded him coming off of that year, it would have had to have been an astronomical haul for everybody to not just immediately just be completely coming to 35th and Shields with torches and pitchforks, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, there's
Um,
that. So,
okay, all right. So, do you want to move to the prospect list here because there's quite a bit to talk about.
yeah, some interesting stuff this week.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna go ahead and move us over to this screen over here. And for those of you that are listening to this in podcast form, we have some infographics that are up here on the screen. That if you want to hop over on YouTube at some point and take a look at, you'll hear us talking about it, but obviously you can't see it. Um, the first one I'm going to bring up here is the white Kylie McDaniel's essentially top 200 because he did a 1 through 100 list, and then he also later added on like the next day added 101 through 200. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring that up. Some interesting stuff here with this. Um, Noah Schultz still being the number one ranked White Sox prospect, not shocking. Um, most lists are coming in with Colson Montgomery somewhere in the top 50-ish area, and he pops up at 33 on here, which is actually kind of higher than he's been in most of these lists. Do you have any thoughts? So I'm just going to go ahead and burst this bubble right now before we move to the athletics list here. But Colson Montgomery was left off the top 100 completely by Keith Law. So your thoughts on ESPN's 33 here?
Yeah, so I will say like Keith Law is generally against the industry just because like he does like his own list, right? We've kind of talked about this. Kylie's very similar to that, where he has um like his own future value system, and that which is why it's interesting that he has the White Sox as the number 2 farm system in baseball, and he has like 11 of the top 200 here. I think that everything here is seems a little bit normal. I think Braden Montgomery is a little lower than most publications, but like I have no issue with putting him at 92. Like he hasn't played yet, right? Obviously, like I think Jacob Gonzalez is way too high. Um, Kylie must really value the fact that Jacob Gonzalez is just going to play short. I mean, I think he can play shortstop, right? I think regardless of like whether or not he hits at all, he hits left-handed and he can play shortstop, which can't be said about a lot of these guys. And then like Grant Taylor's super low. I think he's going to be in the top 100 like a couple of months from now once he actually pitches at Winston-Salem. And then some people have Chase Mydroth like a lot higher than this too, like other places. So I think this is pretty normal. I think, I think it's a positive that, and I know we're going to get into the other part later, but that they're just, it's the number 2 system at ESPN. Um, I think that's good. I know that, they had a top system before and it didn't work. It doesn't mean it's not going to work this time. Um, it's just, it's better than being 20th, right? Like, wouldn't you rather be second than 20th? So I think, they got a lot of interesting guys. I respect Kylie McDaniel quite a bit, and the work that he puts in. So, I was kind of excited to see this one.
Yeah. So, and some other interesting things in another article that Kylie popped up on ESPN is he has some guys who he has like some like predictions slash possibilities for some of these guys, and he has Chase Mydroth as a possibility for the 2025 Rookie of the Year, and also for winning a batting title in his career. So I find that pretty interesting that he's got, I mean, he's got him at 199, so he's at least acknowledging that there's definitely a skill set there. Now, whether it's
Mhm.
an elite skill set, obviously remains to be seen, but at least he's throwing that out there. And, while he is at 199, at least you see his name published on a list as opposed to the other top 100s where you don't see him.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a pretty good third piece in a deal, right? I feel like this is a guy that I don't know that he's necessarily like forgotten about because we talk about him, but I mean, even in the infield mix, and we have people on and we talk about like what spring training is going to look like and that sort of thing. Like he's not on the 40 man, so they literally have to make a move if he's going to be on the 2025 team. I mean, I do think we'll see him because I don't know what much he has to prove, like at Charlotte after doing what he did in Worcester. Um, yeah, I think that's a guy that I always kind of forget about, right? Like I start thinking of the infield. I'm like, well, they clearly want Colson at short, and I think they're going to give Vargas more run, and they signed Rojas, and oh yeah, they have Chase Mydroth too. Like it's just always like I kind of forget about it.
Yeah. To answer Vince's question here, he says, so is Gonzalez already a total flop? Can he come back and become a decent prospect? Here's my thoughts on this, and take it for what it's worth. But there was an injury last year that was kind of lingering and wouldn't go away. And he wasn't even supposed to play in the Barons playoffs at all. And he did. And he hit like 425 or something like that for the playoffs with
Yeah,
some really key important hits, including a home run.
yeah,
So, yes, I think that it's possible that he can become a guy. Um, but it looks, the optics on it aren't great. And as Howard mentioned earlier, said that the Sox wanted Matt Shaw, but the Cubs took him ahead of him. And if that's indeed the case, and they audibled, and then that's what they did, that kind of has a, a possibility of being an ugly look as well.
Well, I don't really know what happened because Teal went 14 right in front of him too. Like, so I had heard in that draft, Blake Mitchell was their target. He went eighth to the Royals. And look, that would have been risky too. Prep catcher at 15. Like he went eight. And then I had heard that morning, obviously, like we were on a live stream, that the scouting department wanted to take one of the prep hitters. And then draft room shenanigans happened, and Jeremy Haber kind of overruled the group and picked the college guy. Now that doesn't mean that Gonzalez was definitely the pick. Like if Teal or Shaw or Tommy Troy or one of those guys was on the board, but he definitely was the pick over like guys like Braden Taylor and you know Chase Davis and some other guys that were on the board. Like they decided to go with Jacob Gonzalez. They got him 600K under slot. It allowed them to take Grant Taylor and do some of the other things that they did. So we'll see. I mean, look, I think Jacob Gonzalez plays in the big leagues. I just think it's a matter of impact. And for me, like, hopefully, I almost did it again. Hopefully, Ryan Fuller and the hitting team, like, I personally, like, if Gonzalez can stay at shortstop, like, I would prefer he be a low average guy that taps into the power more so than just like one of these slappy like shortstop guys because he does have pop, but he can't. I don't think he can do both. I think he has to kind of decide like I'd rather have him be like a 20 homer guy that plays good shortstop than OPS 700 and just kind of be in the big leagues. But we'll see. I would imagine he goes back to Birmingham, and then we'll see from there.
My personal opinion is I think that Jacob Gonzalez is a lot closer to what we saw in the first month in Birmingham than he is what we saw in the middle of the season. Um, and if you guys don't remember, in the first month that he was in Double A, he absolutely torched Double A. And then he had a slump, which, from what I understand, was tied to an injury. But again, we'll see what happens this year. Should be interesting. Uh, Also, one of the other things that Kylie McDaniel suggested as a possibility for a White Sox prospect, he said becoming an elite closer, he has Grant Taylor listed as that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another interesting thing. We'll see, kind of how that whole thing works out with him and what kind of role they expect him to be in. And I would assume that they probably want him to be a starter until he can't be.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, that wouldn't happen unless the same kind of injury issues happen again, like this year, where he just doesn't throw many innings at all. And he's just like one of these guys who is nasty and in shorter stints. I mean, he doesn't have Peyton Pallette on this list, obviously, because he's like a definite reliever now. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Peyton Pallette's like the closer this year at some point. And then obviously Jairo Iriarte is listed on this list. They have a lot to work on with Jairo Iriarte because they want him to like improve his fastball velocity and kind of turn more into the guy that they traded for than the guy that they had last year. But he's another possibility for high leverage relief, like if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, he's since he moved to the bullpen, he has been absolutely filthy. So ESPN number 2,
Yeah,
pretty good.
second ranked system in baseball behind the Dodgers, and he made a note in there that the White Sox will be the number one system by May. I'm guessing because Sasaki won't be prospect eligible anymore, is my guess. But it's like a technicality probably.
Yeah, totally. But it's kind of one of those things where I look at Roki Sasaki and then putting him at number 1 on a prospect list, and I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, I think
why?
they kind of have to because he's rookie of the year eligible. But yeah, it's weird. Like it's just kind of it's like the Thorpe thing, right? Like Baseball America has Thorpe on their list, but nobody else does because Baseball America doesn't care about 45 days active, even though like to win Rookie of the Year, like that's why I just go with the three that we always talk about, right? It's 50 innings pitched, 130 at bats for hitters, or 45 days active. Then you're off prospect list completely because you're not rookie eligible. Baseball America disagrees, and it makes things weird.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring this thing here. Did you see this video? TikTok, the White Sox TikTok / Instagram, whatever. players if they know a phone number from this "Kiss Me Through the Phone" song?
I do not. I mean, I think I saw it, but I didn't like click on it and watch it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that song before, so I had no idea what it even was. I still don't know what that song is,
Mm.
and I think I'm okay with that.
That's not the type of music you're usually mixing on weekends.
Not so well, I mean, sometimes,
Yeah, you'll have. I bet.
actually.
How long until you have like a dad band sing that song
Oh,
in
it
your
would have to be
presence?
I mean, it would have to be like, what's that, Rebecca Black song?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, like
yeah.
Friday or like,
hmm
Call Me Maybe. It would have to be that huge
Yeah,
for, one of those bands to play it.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeesh. All right, let me, go ahead and kill this one here. All right, so here's the one that's been out for a little bit, just so everybody can refresh their memory. You got Noah Schultz at 16, Kyle Teal at 32, Hagen Smith at 34, Colson Montgomery at 39, Braden Montgomery at 55, and Edgar Caro at 66. This is the MLB Pipeline Top 100 by points because they haven't put out a system ranking on MLB Pipeline by prospect points by where they are in the top 100. The White Sox have the number one system in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I don't think they just do a straight like prospect points like you're the top system. I do think they look at the full 30 and count the depth and this sort of thing. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear the White Sox are going to have a top five system at MLB Pipeline. They're not the highest on Schultz. Schultz is 16. I think he's 10 at Baseball America. I think Teal, Smith, and Colson are right in range of where they are everywhere. 55's um, what pretty positive on Braden Montgomery, and this is the highest Edgar Caro is too, I believe, 66, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring this up here from Doug. Says Sox going to do with Caro. He's only on 2 out of the 3 lists. Cannot get a pick for him.
Yeah, they
You
can.
can get a pick for him
Yeah,
because he's on 2 out of 3. If he was out of one, if he was only on 1 out of those 3, then
yeah.
he would not be eligible.
I don't know whose list they're using, but in the past it's been Baseball America, um, MLB Pipeline, and then the list at ESPN actually, which is Kylie's, which helps the White Sox because Caro's on both. So in theory, Caro, Teal, and Colson Montgomery would all qualify the White Sox for a PPI pick if any of them won Rookie of the Year. But there's all sorts of parameters as far as like how much time they have to spend in the big leagues. You know, like you can't just bring a guy up in June, have him go nuts, win Rookie of the Year, and get a pick. He has to be up sooner than that.
Yeah. Uh, so Vince says we need to stack another 2 to 3 good drafts in international periods, more and more depth. I don't disagree. The main issue here is that takes time.
It does.
So we just kind of we're in a holding pattern essentially at this point, just trying to amass as much talent as we can, getting rid of guys that we know that aren't going to impact the White Sox in a huge fashion for the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I think it is like I don't know how quickly they're gonna rush some of these guys to the big leagues, but I mean, it's very top heavy. Like the depth is better, but they're up this high because of the depth, right? So, if 2026 all six of these guys are on the big league team, if you don't develop like George Wolkow, Caleb Bonnemer, your upcoming pick in this next draft, the Robert return, you know what I mean? Like you could easily fall back into the 20s again, like if you're not developing players and stacking, right? So that's just these things like kind of go in cycles.
Yeah, I'm gonna. So did you see this? What is that? Max, he's asked for thoughts on the Levine trade. Go ahead and listen
Yeah.
to the
Yeah, we did it
first 8 minutes of the
we did it
podcast
earlier,
here.
Max. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Yeah,
Brian
so
Brazier.
Brazier is 37 years old, DFA'd by the Dodgers. So I put a tweet out that the White Sox should be interested, just because, like he could be their closer and they could trade him. But my guess is a contender picks him up.
That's what I was kind of thinking too. I mean, obviously, that like when I saw that he was a free agent, I was like, "Oh yeah, the Sox should absolutely pick him up." The problem is that he'd have to want to sign here. And I don't see why. It's not like he's a redemption project here. He's somebody that dominated last year, so he should be getting a major league spot out of the gate with a decent team.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, the Dodgers, I know for a fact that the White Sox have been like monitoring the Dodgers, just like kind of looking for some of their like young pitchers who are hurt, who are on their 40 man, because they're just in a huge roster crunch where they would love some of these guys. Like there's like an Emmett Sheehan and just a whole bunch of arms that like aren't going to factor in for them. But the Dodgers have found a way to not really DFA any of those guys. They've been kind of dumping veterans again, and then they'll just 60-day DL all those guys. It kind of seems like.
To have that kind of a roster and to just be able to continue to do things like this and it doesn't seem to really phase them at all
Yeah.
is it's just insane.
Well, it's a new evil empire. I mean, it's just kind of like the league has done this. Like it's the owner's fault, right? Because they've, we talked about this I think last week, right? But they just have kind of so the owners have let them make it so everybody can basically spend the same on the draft and in the international market, where it's just like so watered down where you can't really overspend anymore. Like you use bonus pools and finite resources and that thing. And the only place where you can spend whatever you want is in free agency. So then the Dodgers do. And they're better at the other two things than everybody else. So they basically like rigged the game for them and they're, doing it. And, with that being said, like it's baseball, right? So they're not guaranteed anything. Like they could get in and lose their first series in the postseason, but it is kind of annoying.
I don't mind it. I find it interesting because I know that the White Sox aren't going to win. So to me, seeing actual things going on where I'm, like I just kind of tilt my head and go, how are they managing to do this? I'm all for seeing how it plays out.
Yeah. Well, did you
So
see? I mean, we kind of glossed over it, but like they're Kylie's top farm system. They just have all these young dudes that are like awesome all the time.
they certainly seem to, and that I mean, most of the time they don't end up playing for the Dodgers, but
They
yeah,
don't,
it's
and
pretty
and
crazy.
they have some of like your Yankee fear. Some of these Dodgers guys are a little bit overhyped, I think. Like sometimes, like your Diego Cartayas, who's untouchable, and now like the Twins get him for nothing, and he likely doesn't even play in the big leagues. Like they know exactly which guys to keep and which guys to get rid of, though, which is I think the difference between them and a lot of other places.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. All right, so here is the Baseball America Top 100, which we've also touched upon here in the last week. But Noah Schultz coming in at 10, Colson Montgomery at 39, Hagen Smith at 40, Kyle Teal at 52, Braden Montgomery at 66, and just missed is Edgar Caro in the top 100.
Yeah, it's pretty egregious. I mean, we don't need to rehash it. It's just, I mean, I think they have like 6 to 8 people voting on their list. We use a similar process at FutureSox. I just, I don't know. 139 WRC plus in the high minors out of a switch hitting catcher that's like going to stay at catcher is a top 100 prospect. So, that's fine.
Yeah, so they did come out with a article this last week of sleepers from everybody's system. The sleeper for the White Sox system is George Wilco.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Chase Mydroth and Drew Thorpe both got votes to be in the top 100 as well.
They had something today with on pitchers too that Grant Taylor was mentioned as well. I think like the
Oh yeah,
highest
yeah.
highest upside pitcher that wasn't listed. Which I mean, here's the thing: if Grant Taylor goes to Winston Salem and does what he did in Kannapolis and doesn't get hurt, he's going to be top 75 or so at midseason.
Did you see this? Howard says that
I did
the
not see
MLB
that.
Network talking about Lance Lynn signing with the White Sox as a closer, and he supposedly, apparently, he did find the salad. He has lost 25 pounds
I don't know why. I don't think they'd ever let him back in their building again
after
after
what
how
happened.
after how he was at the end. I mean, I saw the report that some teams are like considering him as a closer, which okay, fine, but I'd be stunned if it was the White Sox.
I could see Prelander Baroa being a closer with the White Sox for sure. At
Yeah,
least
I could see that too.
at least giving him a shot this year with it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you want him and Leisure to be in the back end of your bullpen because I just think it's good for the organization as a whole.
Hmm.
It's better than like having Justin Anderson be the closer or somebody's like, that you're like not going to really get anything for anyway.
Yeah, that's my thought as well. I don't see them going with a Justin Anderson or something like that. At least I hope not.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
know.
all right, so here's here's where things get kind of weird. Keith Law's top 100. Um, no Colson Montgomery at all in the top 100 players. We had this discussion off stream, but we were trying to decide what was a bigger snub, Colson Montgomery not being in the top 100 or Edgar Caro not being in the top 100. And on this list, he's got Caro there almost in the top 50, but Colson is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and so I think Keith has just gone a little bit too far the other way. I mean, it's his opinion, obviously, and Keith is usually pretty good, like like guessing the outcomes of position players, which maybe shouldn't make us feel that great. But he did see Colson during some rough times. He thought he looked stiff after the back injury. Thought the back looked slow. Doesn't think he can play shortstop. So, I mean, look, if he thinks that he's not going to be like a power hitter and he thinks that he can't play shortstop, then I mean, I guess I get like some of the issues. Like if you think he's a third baseman and he's not like a 20 homer guy, then maybe he's not a top 100 prospect. But it just deviates so far from like what everybody else thinks at this point that it's like a little bit tough. And I will say, so this is pretty funny too, like in a different manner because Keith Law has been very positive about like Chris Getz in general and taking over and some of the people he's hired, whereas Kylie McDaniel has panned it like completely. Like he thought it was a terrible hire and they should have went outside and it like lacked upside and whatever. And then Kylie has him as the number 2 system and Keith has him 12. So it's just kind of funny.
Totally bizarre. 12th ranked farm system. The other publications have been 1, 2, and 3, and Keith Law 12. And I feel like the White Sox depth has obviously gotten better. So seeing them all the way almost in the teens is pretty crazy.
Well, and I think his just missed is significant. Like this is where it doesn't make sense to me because if you think Sean Burke is that good, then I would think that you would have their system ranked higher. Because I think Sean Burke is a guy that, like, even for us, right? Like, we're gonna do our list in March, and like, I don't know where he's gonna be. But the thing with Sean Burke is like he really rose up these prospect lists, and then he was like on the shelf and done, and he basically didn't even rank for us. And like we thought maybe he'd make it back as a reliever. He came back at the end of the year, started. He like he might have the highest upside of anybody in their starting rotation in Chicago. So like we probably do need to consider Sean Burke like in the 9 to 15-ish range. But I feel like he's another one of these like forgotten guys.
Yeah, when we did our top 30s last year, I was the only person that put him in the top 30. And I only did it because I didn't want to pronounce him dead. But at the same time, we hadn't seen him pitch in like a year. So, the wonders of, what, like the last 2 months of the season this last year,
Right,
showing
exactly.
that he still got it.
Yeah, so I'd have to look and see how many. So he threw 19 innings last year.
It's what, 50 innings for a rookie?
Yeah, so he's rookie eligible. I mean, so 19 innings. I don't know how many days active, but I mean, it definitely wasn't 45.
It has to be what,
So
100?
no, 45 days active, and you're
Hmm.
not like a prospect anymore. So I mean, yeah, he's got 3 options. He's only got 19 innings. So yeah, I mean, he comes in. I mean, Sean Burke could be awesome and win rookie of the year too. You're not going to get a draft pick for him because he's not ranked on any of these lists. But um, yeah, he definitely qualifies. He's somebody that we have to consider basically.
Stever got DFA'd, didn't he? Or he got released?
He retired, I believe. But
Retired,
yeah.
that's what it
Yeah,
was.
so he was DFA'd off the 40 man like last year and returned. Um and was just like in the minors, obviously. Yeah, shoulder injuries just destroyed Jonathan Stever.
Yeah, that was tough. 'Cause he looked promising right out of the gate, but then,
Yeah.
it's like we'll never know probably,
Mhm.
w whether his downfall was related to that shoulder injury initially or whether he just had he ran into you know, scouting reports and, they figured it out. So, uh, Max asked when Colas is gonna be gone.
I mean, if they sign another outfielder, I mean, he's probably next on the list. I don't know if they like want to play him in spring training and then like maybe trade him for anything they can get or whether he's just going to get DFA'd and be gone. I don't know, but he's definitely not in their plans. So yeah, that's not a great one. Um, Wolf had a question on Thorpe too. Like, I don't think anybody really knows. I know recently the Sox Machine podcast kind of talked about this. James Fegan, after seeing him at um, Sox Fest Live, just kind of said like, he just had the cortisone shot and he was supposed to start throwing like this week. So my guess is we'll get more info when pitchers and catchers report. To the point where like if Thorpe is fine, like he could start with the team and just not start until that second series or whatever. But I do think they might just slow play him and start him in AAA. But hopefully it's something where he's okay and he's pitching. And there's no structural damage. So I don't really want to jump to conclusions, but it's not great that he has something, obviously.
Yeah. So Beef says that seeing the top 200 from Kylie was pretty awesome. I wish all these spots would do that, even if they didn't overtly rank 101 through 200. Just put the group out there that would be in. I agree. I
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
enjoy that.
I think it's cool. And Beef, one thing we said, like, so he does his whole like future value system, obviously, so it's easy to do. Like if you're ranking everybody 20 to 80 with future value, then you just like put a chunk of guys together and it's easy to like come up with that list basically. I feel like not everybody does that.
Yeah, having a guy that works for ESPN that actually used to scout players,
And yeah,
I
we
find that
worked in a front office, right? Yeah.
yeah, that I think that definitely helps things. Some of the other spots, most of the other spots don't have that. So
No, and I know like Jim Callis is a buddy of ours but they do a ton where they'll like put a list together and they'll reach out to like a million executives and scouts and stuff to try to get like a consensus like before they make their list because oftentimes Jim will come on with us and whether it's talking about the draft list or an individual list, like very much disagree with what MLB Pipeline has actually published. Like if it were his personal list. So, I mean, we just saw the same thing with Carlos Colazo and Ben Badler. Both said that Kiro was on their personal 100s. So, I, I mean, I don't really know how that happens, but it's kind of interesting.
yep, it is interesting, especially when it's those two guys that are saying that he's on the
Right.
top 100. It's crazy. Uh, so Adrian asks about 2026 free agency with Robert Jr. most likely being traded at some point this year. Do you think there'll be players for somebody like a Cedric Mullins with the Orioles to fill center field?
I mean, I am fascinated by this, and I put it on Twitter this week, and people got very mad at me because Jerry Reinsdorf sucks, and the White Sox are doomed forever. Um, but no, I mean, look, I think like they're going to trade Robert this year. I don't know if they can trade Andrew Benintendi, but if they can, they will. Those are their last two contracts on the books, like ever, for anything. So if those two guys are gone and the money's gone, literally coming into the 2026 season, all they have are ARB and pre-ARB players, which means a payroll of like under $15 million, which means, yes, they have to spend. Now, you know, I think that's a year where it's still a lot of prospects. Like, hopefully, we know more about Teal and Caro and Colson Montgomery, and you have a young rotation with Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith in it, right? So, like, is that the offseason where you're filling in holes with stopgaps again? Because it's very likely the following winter, like, there's going to be a work stoppage, or do you start adding some real pieces? I, I probably lean on the former. And then after the collective bargaining agreement comes into play, like then there'll be real players. But look, guys, like I have no reason to believe that they're not going to be players in free agency. Is it going to be like what we want? Like probably not. Like are they like I would bet against them being in the market for these $350 million players just because of who the owner is, but like they literally have to spend money at some point because they're not going to run a payroll of $15 million. So, I mean, in an ideal world, like, you have enough homegrown players that are on your team and then you fill in the gaps, but I mean, if Jerry's gonna let you spend $150 million on payroll again at some point, like that's you could bring in a lot of guys. Like I just they have to spend at some point because they literally don't have a choice. I just
So
don't know when it's
here's
gonna be.
yeah, but here's my fear and thought on this whole thing is so as it was mentioned in the comments a little bit higher up that the Dodgers have an absolutely absurd uh, regional sports network that's giving them astronomical amounts of money. As it's well known, the White Sox have started their own TV channel with the Blackhawks and the Bulls, CHSN, which has not been rolled out very well, and people still can't watch the Bulls or the Blackhawks right now because they can't get the channel and they don't want to pay for the app. And another big issue for me personally is that that app is not available on Apple TV. You can only get it on a phone. That's a big issue. If I want to watch it at home on my TV, I don't want to be casting it from my phone to my TV. Like that's bush league.
You can't get the app on the TV. I didn't know that.
Not on Apple TV.
Oh,
I
I
mean, you
wonder
might
if
be
I
able
I
to get
wonder
it
if I
like
can on my Fire Stick if I could, but I haven't tried yet.
possibly.
Yeah.
I'm just going by I've searched it up in the App Store and it does not exist.
Mhm.
That's a problem for me. Um, but the White Sox do not have that huge amount of revenue coming in from their RSN.
They don't.
So what is going to end up being that line in the sand that Jerry Reinsdorf and the committee draw payroll at? Like what can we expect the White Sox to actually spend at this point? I don't
Well,
know.
well, the payroll this year is like 80 million. So if it's 80 million, they have like 80 million to spend because they literally have nothing on the books is my point, and like it's just kind of like, okay, you're gonna have to spend at some point because they're not gonna have a team with all pre-arb contracts. Like they're not going to. That's like not a thing. I mean, when Chris Getz was on that recap podcast, he kind of answered that he thinks he will sign $100 million player, which, I mean, come on, like it's like not even something that we should like be like praising them for. It's like so
I mean,
ridiculous.
he's just saying that somebody will be $100 million player. It doesn't mean that it's not a 10-year,
I
$100 million
know.
contract.
I know. Like it's just so ridiculous. So soon, no. I mean, like next off season, will they sign some players? Like maybe. I think it depends a lot on how this year goes. Like to be honest with you, and I think next off season will be weird for a lot of teams that are already bracing for a work stoppage in the winter of 2026.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think that's going to be a interesting thing when the White Sox clear some of this. I mean, I'm not even going to say clear this payroll space because it sounds absolutely ridiculous when their payroll's so low already anyway. But when some of that stuff frees up and they figure out what they're going to do, I'm interested to see what that number is going to end up being. Where is I saw another. Saw one more on here. Ah, that's the one I wanted. Howard says, I read somewhere that Bonham might maybe switch to center field.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that. That was mentioned last week too. Was it Howard too that mentioned it last week? But I mean, we'll see. I mean, he like I heard he looked good at shortstop, like in instructs. So I don't know why you'd move him to the less valuable spot, but I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, I think he probably starts in Arizona, is too good for Arizona, and ultimately ends up at Kannapolis like Wolko did. We got a couple months to figure it out though.
Yeah, I did. I do remember hearing it as well somewhere. I just don't remember who it was that I heard say it. It might have been MLB Network or maybe Carlos Colazo or something. Um, but I definitely did hear somebody mention that they thought that maybe he possibly might be moved to the outfield up the middle. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we will. I mean, we're gonna figure it out here pretty soon when all these guys are in camp.
Yeah, and I mean that's going to be something interesting. I mean, we have the list. I haven't compiled the list as to where everybody fits on the depth charts here for spring training, but there's going to be a lot of guys vying for not many positions, and I don't know. I mean, to me it feels like they're competing due to talent, and it's not just the White Sox bringing in a bunch of for the most part a bunch of old guys that don't belong anywhere. But there's something like 90 something veteran free agents that are still out there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another one or two get invited to camp.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what spots those would be. But yeah, no, I mean, there are a ton of free agent players that are going to be taking no money who weren't really prepared to do that. I will say we could do this now. I think what we're gonna with the Super Bowl next week, we're gonna record next Monday. And I think Sean Anderson of CHGO is gonna join us. You know, somebody at CHGO still likes me apparently enough to come on the show. We're gonna do just some spring training battles and roster stuff with him.
Yeah, I don't think we'll be having Adam Hogan, but Sean Anderson. That sounds good.
Yeah. Oh, so Howard brought up the magical thing. I was going to talk Cubs really quick. How many middle infielders do the Cubs need?
More, always more.
So Nicky Lopez coming back home.
But it's a minor league
He's
deal.
from Naperville, obviously. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a minor league deal, but he kind of fits like that team, I think. Just because I mean they traded for Vidal Brujan, they signed John Birdie. Um, they have a bunch of these like infielders, and I think they want to play Matt Shaw at third if they can. So it's just fine. Nicky Lopez should be a minor league contract, and he got one, and he gets to stay local.
Yeah, I mean, I think he deserves to play baseball. I just don't know if it's at the major league level at this point.
I'm really glad the White Sox didn't do it, because I could have easily seen like Nicky Lopez back on a minor league deal starting shortstop, like for the Sox, and I would just much rather go with Baldwin or Mydroth or like one of these other guys that you already have than do that.
Yeah, so I was asked a little bit higher up here in the comments by Adrian. Could Brooks Baldwin also be a candidate for center field? I don't know about center field, but I could see him possibly populating a left field or a right field
Yeah, he
spot.
can moonlight in an outfield corner. I think Brooks can play. I think Brooks like full form if he has a big league career is a super utility type guy, Like I think he could handle a position especially on a bad White Sox team, but I just think like part of what makes him interesting is the ability to like play all over the place.
Yeah, I completely agree. He should be able to pretty much pick up everywhere except for catcher, and hopefully, I don't want to ever see him pitch either.
Yeah.
Even though it's possible that he could be good at it.
Well, it's kind of funny, like, and I don't want to bring up like, look, I don't like comparing guys to Ben Zobrist because he was awesome, but like when people used to say like Ben Zobrist's a utility guy, I'm like, no, he's not. He's a 5 WAR player that just plays everywhere. That's not a utility guy. When you're putting up 5 win seasons in the big leagues, he's just awesome, and he gave people the flexibility to move all over the place. Baldwin would be more likely, your typical utility type guy.
Yeah, at
Yeah,
Sox
Larry
Fest,
Garcia. Yes, exactly.
Larry Garcia. No, no. Uh, I don't want to call him. I mean, I guess the ultimate Larry Garcia. How dare you?
Hmm.
My kid got his picture taken with Brooks Baldwin at Sox Fest Live, and Brooks Baldwin looked like he could be hanging out in my basement with my
Oh
kid
yeah, dude, he
at any
did.
point in time.
Yeah.
Crazy. Um, You got
Somebody
anything else for this
Howard
week
Howard
here?
brought up Sheets and Moncada still free agents. I think Sheets is going to be a free agent for a while. Moncada, I would say probably prior to spring training latches on somewhere. What we saw some Yankee interest there. Um, I don't think I'm ready for Yoan Moncada to OPS 850 and hit 25 dingers for the Yankees this year in a World Series run. I don't think I'm ready for it.
I mean, you could totally see Moncada coming in and
You know,
doing something if they could manage to keep him healthy.
Yankees third baseman and 7 hitter just having a career year, 100% could see it happening.
I was thinking about this yesterday, actually. So the Yankees no longer have Soto. I mean, they made it to the World Series last year with no Soto. I feel like their road is significantly more difficult to get to the World Series.
I think the road is more difficult to like win the East for sure. Which then yes, you're correct. Like makes it like once you get in, like I think their pitching's pretty good and like they have Aaron Judge, obviously. But I mean, like Baltimore's good, Boston's trying. I think Toronto is still trying. The thing is, I think like most of the teams in the West are like taking a step back. And the AL Central's pesky. So yeah, no, I mean it's like the Yankees just kind of added a bunch of guys. Like, what Cody Bellinger are they going to get? Like it's just, the Yankees are kind of a weird team.
Uh, so Gavin Sheets is getting some run here in the chat.
I saw,
Sheet Sheets could be a good fit in Baltimore. Seems like a pirate signing. Beefloaf asks, "Does Sheets speak Korean?" I'm
yeah,
sure he probably eats Korean barbecue. I don't know if he speaks Korean though.
yeah, that's mean, but that's where he belongs probably.
Yeah, that kind of has one of those like that flavor of like Dion Viciado type thing, where he goes there and is allowed to hit for contact and just runs into some home runs and becomes a
I mean, he could do, he
useful
could,
member.
I mean, he could be really good. I feel like in Korea, like that's,
Yeah,
he could build a great career for himself there and be like a DH in Korea. So
yeah.
pretty
I mean, or if
interesting.
they, I mean, imagine if they allowed him to actually play first base. I would have rather had him there than Vaughn
Yeah,
as an actual
for
first
sure.
baseman because
Right.
he's the size of a first baseman.
Yeah. So it was brought up in the chat, but Jack Flaherty did. He just went back to the Tigers on a 2-year, $35 million deal.
Did he?
Yeah, that's not bad. He was pretty good last year.
Way to go, Jack. We're all proud of you. You
Max
good?
L was the first one that mentioned it here, and then yeah, it's on Twitter now. So yeah, all
Credit
good.
goes to Max L for breaking the story. All right, so I'm gonna walk us out of here, James.
All righty.
All right, outro. You guys have been listening/watching the Future Sox podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know that you can find us every Sunday night at 8 p.m., except for next Sunday, because we're not going to compete with the Super Bowl on YouTube and the Purple app. You can also find this podcast along with all our other written content at futuresox.net. If you are looking for White Sox prospect highlights, you can find them on X at Future Sox and now also here on our YouTube channel. If you love the content and want to support us here at Future Sox, there is a link to our Patreon in our channel description and at futuresox.net. You can also toss up a super chat on our YouTube stream. Also, don't forget to like this stream and subscribe with notifications so you know when we're going live while helping us in the World Wide Web algorithms. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. We appreciate all you guys. Thanks for coming and hanging out tonight, guys. We will catch you guys next Monday. We appreciate you guys. You guys are the best. Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.